on everything. And, we forget too that James Wolfenson was a strong protege as well. Wolfenson became head of the World Bank, right? And that was because Al Gore and Maurice Strong championed him to become, and then who became Wolfenson's spokesman? None other than this Mr. Brown, right? You can see how the incestuous club is. And so again, the profile is raised. And so, Brown had registered as a lobbyist with Sawyer Miller in Washington, which is very close to the Democrats. But you see again this confluence of everybody. And then now let's tie it into something else. So you've got Gore, Maurice Strong, James Wolfenson. So they're all there. And then who else does Maurice Strong bring in? He brings in the Aga Khan. The Aga Khan, is the spiritual leader, or the leader of a sect of Shiites, Muslim Shiites from the Ismaili sect, who are considered, to many Muslims, are considered a heretic. It's a form of heresy by what they believe. But the Aga Khan Foundation is, it's such a good, lovely foundation. They're doing all this humanity work around the world. Well, the problem for that is in 1991, a guy named Kabani was coming across the U.S. border in a Mercedes at Blaine, Washington, and he got stopped, and there was, lo and behold, 1.3 million in cash in the back of the truck. I was working, I got an RCMP investigator who sat at the desk beside me, drove down to the border, seized the money, and began a very interesting investigation that, lo and behold, we identified over $100 million of potential drug money was laundered through the Aga Khan Foundation. The IRS in Dallas ran a sting operation in the early 90s with one of the guys who agreed to cooperate. In fact, he came up to Vancouver, and I looked after him for a few days because it was a joint investigation. And the IRS was offering the money out as cocaine money. And they said, no problem, we'll take it into the church, take it into the, and then because we're a good mosque, all the money then flows up to the Aga Khan and into the Aga Khan Foundation, which had registered charities in Switzerland. And so again, yes, you do some good with your money, but what's the source of your money? You become a laundromat. You become a very convenient thing. Now, let's just take it back a little bit. So in Canada, we have the Canada Revenue Agency, which is very similar to, which is exactly like your IRS. So in Canada, the Canada Revenue Agency, they've only given it to a number of charities, give them money, but the Canadian from having certain this very, very charter, which is, again, one of these other NGOs. I'm not saying that they're helping this migrant caravan, but it's all of those sort of groups working in concert. You know, fingers on a hand. I don't have to poke you with the same finger every time, but the control of that hand is by me. And George Soros funds a number of these NGOs. They don't have to attack with a concerted force. They can just kill you by 1,000 bites. And then, you know, you look at, you know, this cobble of people that have come together. Remember, after Al Gore became vice president, who was among the very first people he invited to have dinner with him or lunch with him at the executive office? Maurice Strong and Miss Barcina. So, you know, you see how this circle jerk is what it is. You know, let's sit in a big circle of self-masturbation and tell everybody how good we are and how wonderful we are. No, every one of you guys are true believers. And you know what it's like with any zealot. You know, you look at, oh, you got shiny eyes. Well, to me, they're a nut job, right? Even zealots who agree with my position, I don't want you on my side, because you don't know any limits, and the ends justify the means. So you know, no need to pick up with me. So you have all of this stuff, and then let's tie it into even more interesting touch points. So I earlier talked about how the FBI set up did that abscam scam, right? The sting operation. Well, the FBI only started doing their undercover operations as an organized investigative technique in 1971. And they started the undercover program as a result of domestic terrorism by the Weatherman organization. The Weatherman organization was founded by Bill Ayers, another Marxist. And Bill Ayers, U.S. military personnel and recruiting centers were I don't know if they were killed, but they were certainly injured in bomb explosions, and they were attacked internally, but a big deal of violence inflicted. So that's why the FBI set up their undercover program. Now let's go forward 20 years. Maurice Strong and all the Earth Summit and all the rest of it. So then you have a fellow said, hey, let's support this really attractive candidate who malleable to our needs by the name of Barack Obama. And when Barack Obama, he solicited for support, and part of that support came in the form of a fundraiser where he, again, this is public information where he's talked about, where he launched his political career in the living room of the same Bill Ayers who was the founder of the Weatherman. Now, let's connect another dot. You've heard of the Chicago Climate Exchange.
Yes.
Only
vaguely. I never even knew what it was.
Right. But it's a tool to basically transfer wealth outside the United States under the auspices of unfavorable conditions for U.S. manufacturing companies. And let's put it, and who greatly benefits? It's really, China and some of the other emerging markets. But again, one of the people closely connected to the climate exchange, Chicago Climate Exchange, is a fellow named John Ayers. John Ayers is the brother of Bill Ayers. So you can see how the links, just as so many people are surprised, say, how can 45, 50 people who are 1 degree of separation from the Clintons be found dead under different circumstances, most suspicious? How can one guy be so connected? You've got the Ayers to Obama, you've got the Gore, you've got the Clinton, you've got every Canadian prime minister since 1967. You've got all these NGOs, you've got the UN. So let's keep talking about Maurice Strong and what a wonderful man he is. When he was at the UN, there was an initiative, we need to help North Korea. And he was sent in as an emissary to North Korea. Well, that money now is strongly believed to have developed their nuclear training facility, or that facility where they're developing their nuclear weapons. And if you recall, when the two reporters, that Ling, I think her name is, and the other one where Bill Richardson went there as the emissary to go get them out. Bill Richardson didn't do dick. Maurice Strong had that all set up for him. Maurice Strong and Bill Richardson, they go back decades. And in fact, we're neighbors. Remember I told you about this Gaia religion, that that Maurice Strong is sort of the founder of, which is this Mother Earth worship. It's a paganism, but he's a true believer. I mean, it's a bit of insanity to me, but he already had a long-standing relationship with Bill Richardson, so he had lined that up. He got the North Koreans to do it because North Korea is saying, "Hey, we need to return the favor for how you've assisted us, Maurice, in providing us with money that got redirected to some of our military weapons development." So, Maurice Strong, is he a saint? Well, then you had you're familiar with the Iraq Oil for Food program.
Actually, yes, vaguely.
Okay. So, after the Kuwait invasion, you had Desert Storm, the first one anyways. And so Saddam Hussein was still in power, and you had a number of, you had mass starvation, and Iraq was looking, hey, we need to sell some oil so that we can get food to feed our people. And so they called it the Iraq Oil for Food program. And it was monitored by, guess who was in the middle of that? Maurice Strong, and to the World Bank. So what happens in that? This guy's for the people, starving kids. He engaged in transactions that personally benefited Saddam Hussein, and then got caught taking almost $1 million backhander from a Korean businessman that they had siphoned off. Money that was supposed to go feed starving kids in Iraq went to Maurice Strong's personal. Right? This is this great humanitarian. He could care less about the kids or the environment. It is all about a means to an end on a political agenda. So where did Maurice Strong go when he finally got outed that it was hard to defend the indefensible? He went running to Beijing, and that's where he lived out the remaining years of his life with his true compatriots, which is the Marxist leadership in China. But I also want to make another point. Is remember in Iraq there was a number of oil companies that wanted to get in Iraq after the war to sort of rebuild, but also to get a number of contracts, get the cheap oil. And one of them was ELF, the French oil company, which I think partially owned, or maybe more than partially, by Total. But one of the significant shareholders of ELF, and they got caught in corruption issues in Iraq and the like. Remember I said earlier that Maurice Strong was the president of Power Corp, this Quebec-based conglomerate. Well, Power Corp has a position in ELF, but their main partner in business is a Belgian fellow, a billionaire in Belgium, and he's the main shareholder of ELF. So again, you've got Maurice Strong there trying to rebuild a country. All you were doing was siphoning off money. The people that you work with were engaged in corruption, for intending to help the people. And you look at Banque Nationale de Paris, they got done for $9.5 billion sanctions, a fine for violating sanctions against Iran and trading with everybody. Again, you're only 1 degree of separation again from the ownership level of those banks at the shareholder level, and Maurice Strong and the people that have been part of his world for 60, 70 years. So you look at this incestuous web, you say, how could it happen? Well, it happens because you have people who are having you look left while they're working on the right. You have an oil man, a guy who made his fortune out of oil and gas, advocating the complete opposite, the antithesis, which is, Mother Earth, this carbon, fossil fuels. But that was because that was driving a different political agenda, which was to do wealth transfer out of the United States to other parts of the world where they felt in their socialist mind that this is how people should be. And because the ends justify the means, we can do anything because our cause is pure. That is how we are where we're at today. And so I encourage your listeners, there is evidence of this that is so overwhelming, and don't even get me started on uranium one.
No, I got to, but I want to ask you something. Okay, you're talking about Bill Richardson, New Mexico governor from 03 to 11?
Correct.
And long about 2000, Los Alamos Labs, there's a fire apparently started out there and suddenly we have missing hard drives that were magically discovered behind the copy machine. I'm thinking that, so what was Bill Richardson doing? What was his level of influence before he became governor in '03? Because I'm thinking somebody facilitated the fire and the theft of the hard drives, and after they took everything off of them, they put them behind the copy machine where they were discovered. I mean, what a Bravo Sierra story, right?
100, absolutely. But how's that any different than the Awans, the Pakistani IT guys who
Oh yeah,
all the Democratic Party's IT, that's all gone off to Pakistan, ISI. And, what's the chances the laptop's going to be found in I mean, these things, as a professional investigator, yeah, sometimes there's a coincidence, but not this many coincidences that always protect one small group.
You seem like such a professional's professional and a genteel individual. So forgive me if I seem a little coarse here, but what the hell is the matter with everybody that they're not seeing this? I mean, how long do people have to have their noses rubbed in what before they figure out that's what they're having their noses rubbed in? I mean, what is this? Some sort of massive space-based mind control moron ray that's being shined on everybody? I've been watching this stuff for years, and I just shake my head. And the stuff that you're saying is just astounding, but you have confirmed about 90% of the stuff that I kind of thought was going on. Well, but you've also added an additional 90% of stuff that I didn't know was going on by naming these names and tying this stuff together. I don't understand why there's no action on this other than the love of money keeps it all covered up.
Well, like I said, when I worked undercover, I only focused on three things when I wanted to ingratiate myself to a target: greed, power, or ego. Which of those things do I need to facilitate so that you will see me useful to bring to your circle so I can facilitate that? Again, I touches on what I said earlier. Human nature has not changed in 15,000 or ever since modern man was developed. Jealousies, whatever. But to John, I can simplify your answer because I'm dumbfounded. How can you look outside into a perfectly blue sky and see the sun and tell me it's midnight? How can I look at a 6'6" man with a beard standing in front of me naked in the shower and says, "Well, actually, I'm a woman"? No, you're not a woman. You're a man. I mean, but when I grew up, I didn't even know half of these terms until a couple of years ago. I didn't know it. I still don't know what cis means and binary. I mean, binary to me is zeros and ones on computer code. I mean, we've infected our population, and this is a broken record, from the education system. We don't have an education system. We have an indoctrination system.
Yes.
And the problem with when I went through school, and probably when you went through school, science and engineering, okay, you're an engineer. That means you build roads, bridges, chemical engineer, you build refineries. But today we've got social engineers, right? We talk about things that are just fluff. It's not, social engineering. So I don't know where it goes, but John, it's something even more fundamental. By nature, I'm a libertarian. Although I work for government, I don't want government in my life. I think I can be more self-sufficient and do better. There's a need for government. There's a need for government departments and agencies to serve the people. I'm 100% on board with the concept that we need to help our fellow citizens where and when we can, when they need a helping hand. And it's got to be done in a responsible, sustainable way. But we can't keep providing multi-generations to people who choose not to help themselves. At some point, that system collapses on itself. But we've filled everybody's head with the pablum of trite sound bites. Case in point, the average American today, under the age of 40, who rally against, the police are evil, the intelligence services are evil, the military is evil, government, big brother, they're overlooking everything we do. You know what? I come from that world, and you pass me on the highway so fast to give away your liberty and your rights that I can't keep up. My wife, who's younger than me, A few years back. She says, Bill, you're looking kind of old. I said, well, what do you mean? My hair getting a little grayer? She goes, no, you're walking around with a BlackBerry. And I looked at it. I said, well, what's wrong? BlackBerry, it's good. It's secure. And it's, for my communications, it's that time anyways, the best it can be. She goes, yeah, but Bill, you should be doing something more intuitive. Everybody jumped onto iPhone and Apple because, I don't want to do the thinking for me. I want my iPhone to be intuitive. I want everybody to know where and what I'm thinking, so artificial intelligence and these computer people can do the thinking for me. They've absolutely given away their God-given right to free will, free choice. 30 years ago, it became illegal to do subliminal advertising. Remember how they would do it, where they'd slip a sexual scene in a bottle of scotch? That's illegal. Subliminal messaging is on everything in the world today, pushing a message and agenda through the use of these social apps. Again, goes back to what I said earlier. If we're setting up an undercover scenario, you think an event took place on Monday or a magic show's taken place on a Wednesday, but we've already laid the seeds the previous Monday. And there's an orchestration to all of this. And again, greed, power, ego. It's coming down to what is driving those people. And nobody applies. They don't graduate university and say, I'm going to apply for a job with the deep state. I'm going to apply for a job in the shadow government. And that is an artificial construct of people who get inside these jobs. They may have gone in there with a purity of purpose when they start, but all of a sudden, hey, I can advance further. I can build up my resume. I want to go from being one of these 1%ers in the lower rank to the top 1%er and maybe be a 0.1%. And so they jump on the coattails of abysmal behavior. It's unforgivable, the actions of many of your elected officials and public policy people, and whether it be in the FBI, whether it be in DOJ, whether in these departments, where they have allowed their personal bias, their personal agenda. We all have it. I'm no different. But you know what? It doesn't let me interfere with doing my duty and doing my job. Remember this, what I said at the beginning, duty to service. We don't have that anymore. Everybody says I'm offended, so I'm going to be a whistleblower. You look at Bradley Manning and Snowden. Everybody, there are digital heroes. People say, they didn't do any harm. And WikiLeaks, with our disclosures, we didn't do any harm. Well, I'll give you some real life examples where they do harm. And it's unfortunate that many of the people who should be speaking up and advocating from the government's position are ill-equipped to do so. But you've got to have diversity in your surface. You don't have to have a diversity of experience. You just got to have a diversity of appearance. So you live with that competency when the proverbial hits the fan, and you have to justify it. But when I you said earlier in my introduction where I was asked to launder discounted bonds for Libya, North Korea, and Iran, right? So that was. And that was look, Bill, you're going to have to record 3 that they won't word. Operating under, because when I'm going into that country and I've got my covert company, I'm staying. I don't remember the other one now. We have to send it through where it's going through. Spawn out of there, and Bill Miker undercover for text. So they'd see a cable, Bill McDonald, Northern Star Shipping. They might think casual observer. That's part of a business development, or somebody that the government's assisting, promote American job, blah blah blah. But when Bradley Manning takes millions of cables that he certainly never read and gives them to WikiLeaks, who's in possession of stolen property, who then a good publisher edits. There's no editing. He just takes it out there. Consequences be damned, and fires it out into the public domain. And then guys like me are exposed, right? So there is a real cause and effect. And of course, you hear from the loony left, give us an example where somebody was compromised. Well, first of all, we're not going to say, because one thing leads to another. But the other problem is we now can't take the risk. And remember I told you earlier about us setting up covert infrastructure to do things around the world. Well, we used a lot of our embassies. Not that they knew we were doing it for. We used even with our own names, and that we were part of business development or other things that nothing to do with a covert action, because we didn't want anybody to know. And so, but this goes out in cables. Hey, if there's a dispute, which is the lawyer that is best suited for this? Hey, if we wanted to set up a money exchange, how, So much information does go out in cables, and it has to be stored somewhere. The good guy's data mine, the bad guy's data mine. It is very easy for the bad guys with these mindless people now in government who care not a whit about their oath of office, about the Official Secrets Act, about their not just their fiduciary obligation, their patriotic obligation, their security obligation. They've totally abrogated it, and everybody gives them a free pass. So, you ask me, what's happened here? I don't get it. I happened to watch a video the other day where some young white guy yelling at a widow of a New York police officer who had died on 9/11. He's running in to help people, and this guy's saying, I hope he rots in hell. I hope I can meet that guy. I mean, he wouldn't be on his feet for long, I'll guarantee you. That level of zealotry, and that's what's taken over the United States political discourse, zealotry. I mean, this nonsense open borders. I have a good friend in Mexico who's been at the very pointy end of the spear with the cartels and everything else. He said, Bill, there's been, the cartels are importing knowledge from Afghanistan. There are Afghans here. IEDs have been going off for a number of years in Mexico. Where's that knowledge coming from? I told you again earlier, when we look to set up how we do set up our covert infrastructure, we're looking for opportunities under free trade agreements where we can move money and channel it through certain business sectors that are becoming voluminous or aren't going to be scrutinized. We look at pathways of people. If I want to bring one of my people into a jurisdiction and I see that there's an uncontrolled border or they're going in there, I can send them there without ID because, hey, I'm from wherever, I don't have ID or I happen to be in here. I mean, absolutely, this is going to happen. I mean, because that's what enemies do, whether they be terrorists or government enemies. They will inject people into the flow because you can hide things in a big pipe better than you can hide it in a small pipe. And there's not going to be the same level of scrutiny as to identification. And one of the things when we would give backstopping and have to give ID to our people, Canada's a country of immigrants. Nobody has a problem with immigrants. We're just saying, come in through the front door. Come in through the back door. We don't know what you're coming in with. But because of this, it also gives us the ability to say, well, I come from, Syria, or I come from here. So the government institutions are broken down. So I had to get new ID. So we don't have to worry about creating a history that goes back 30 years for somebody. We can give them, 3 years because I came here as a boat person. I came here as a migrant and I can tie it into here. And here's pictures. And on a very simple example, when I was a young undercover, hey, Bill, you're going to go buy heroin. So you had to get into the local community. What would I do, John? I would go to where at a certain time every day, the needle exchange, the free needle exchange would be going by. Okay, I'm in there. I pull my rig or my needle out of my sock. I say, okay, I want to change for a new one. Guys are seeing you there, right? You're there. I'm getting a clean needle, paid for by the taxpayer. taxpayer won't give free needles for a diabetic, but we'll give them to the junkies. And so I get my needle, and then I go with the guys to say, hey, I'm looking for some down, I'm looking to get a hit. Okay, hey, come with us. I mean, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, John. But guys like me, I'm a good guy, but I'm exploiting it. Bad guys are saying, I'm going to exploit that as well. So you create a needle exchange, you create those sort of environments, you're going to attract a certain element. Then you're going to get guys like me who say, hey, I have an agenda. So I create a nice migrant caravan. What else is in there? I absolutely 100% guarantee you that there are going to be certain government agencies who have a vested interest in getting certain people moved or product moved. Not everything is as it seems.
Man, you talk about a mind-blowing conversation. I think this we've had a lot of real good conversations on this program, but I got to tell you, this is that is the expression. This is mind-blowing. I understand. You said don't get me started on uranium one, but I understand that it actually the exchange amounted to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I've said this a couple of times. If I say something wrong, then I want to correct it. This might be a good opportunity to do that. I understand the actual exchange was more like 60 times the world's production of the actual product. Is that true?
That I don't know. I've not heard
good.
that. I don't know that.
Okay.
But you know, on this uranium one, what was interesting, before I left government, I was the officer in charge of what's called the Integrated Market Enforcement Team out of Vancouver. We're responsible for capital markets enforcement pretty much in Western Canada. And so I'd set up a market intelligence unit, had guys, so we getting a lot of information and intel, knew a lot of the players. A number of the names associated with that uranium one deal were familiar to me. Some I had met with personally at different times. When this all blew up, I reached out to a retired FBI contact. I said, you know, I've got a lot of information, whether it's relevant or not, I don't know, but I'm going to give you some information that I've not seen it in anywhere in the media, where I think your investigators, if they're going to follow up, need to start paying attention to some of these things. And I gave them the name of a Swiss billionaire who had, you know, strong links himself to Russia. The fact that, you know, this fellow was connected to some of the people central to the uranium one story. I said, I don't know if he's involved or not, but I do know that he has two companies that are nothing more than mail drops at the Zurich airport, from which millions and millions of dollars have flowed into suspect transactions. So I said, you might want to talk to him. I said, I know the guys, you know, Uranium One and Eurasia were part of the deal. I know who they went through in London to line up the relationship in Kazakhstan. And because that's where a lot of where the exit came. If you recall, Bill Clinton went over to Kazakhstan, spoke with the president, $500,000, nice payday while your wife's, you know, in her position. And lo and behold, that whole deal started to come together and get in uranium. But I said, look, I know a guy out of London who facilitated that original introduction that the Canadian guys are now exploiting. He's angry because he didn't get paid for the introduction. You might want to go talk to him. Whether he has knowledge, I don't know, but it makes sense that you should talk to these guys because he knows all the players. He didn't get his cut, and there may be something more here that can be developed. You know, so I expected, because, you know, I'd gotten an FBI director's commendation in the past. I'd worked with them many times. I taught at Quantico. So I'm a known entity to them. So I thought, okay, they would treat this as credible. Crickets. Never got a phone call from anybody to say, hey, Bill, you know, pretty precise info you're giving us. So it became clear to me there was absolutely no political desire within FBI leadership to pursue that. So again, I'm not going to go down the conspiracy theory roads. I've got my own view and opinion. You know, one good thing as an investigator is you never say no to information. Even inculpatory, exculpatory, I can prove a lie telling in my investigation. I get something that, okay, it doesn't go anywhere, that's fine, but you discard it. But you do not ignore information that's credible, especially on something of that magnitude.
Bill, what an extraordinary conversation. You know what I really want to do? I want to put this thing up on the up on our site. I don't know why I'm concerned about this, but I am. So I'm just running it past you. I'd like for everybody, whether they're a member of Caravan or not, to see this conversation. I really would, because I've been saying this a lot lately, an awful lot. These may not be the end days as described in the Bible, but they're certainly due until the end days get here. I mean, these people are painting us into a corner, and somebody's going to go loony on us and pull a trigger at just exactly the wrong time as far as the world is concerned, and exactly the right time for them to pull that trigger. And I think the only thing that will save anything worth saving is information, because these people, I mean, so many of them out there, I mean, the country's divided almost, I mean, if any of these statistics are to be believed, every poll said Mr. Trump could not be elected president. I get all that, but it appears that approximately half are on the left and half are on the right. And I think a lot of people who are on the left don't even know why they're on the left, because they're not even thinking anymore. Their feelings are running them. And I mean, you just alluded several times. So there's nothing new going on here. It's all so Solomonian. King Solomon's. There's nothing new under the sun. There isn't anything new under the sun. It's just like what you said. What is it? Greed, power, and ego. That's pretty much it. But once it goes to a certain level, look at this idiot Hillary Clinton. She wants to run for president again. I mean, she's worse than Johnny Marco. And when Bogart was saying, "Will you ever get enough, Marco?" "No, soldier, I guess I never will get enough." See, you know, that Edward G. Robinson thing. These people just can't get enough.
Well, I think they're addicted to it, right? They're addicted to the power, the need to be in the limelight. It's narcissism. Why does every Hollywood celebrity who knows the square root of Dick all about life, real life, opine and on every social issue that they can? You know, speaking of Hollywood, one of my own
So test. Can you guys hear me okay? I don't think I can. Test. Can you guys hear me?
On Discord,
Well, that's informative. How we're getting screwed left and right by our own people.
Right? Quite a bit. 101st had left that running, but I wasn't sure how to turn it off, so I just muted it on the server for right now. I do have some things. I sent you guys a link a minute ago of some stuff I found, but if you guys brought some materials or want to talk about, I think tonight's topic is the oath, which after that little piece, it's always good to talk about, I guess. So I'll open the floor to you guys. I got to put myself back on mute just so I can keep things going straight. So not to put anybody on the point, but I want to make sure give you guys opportunity if you brought anything to talk about.
Well, somebody had asked me if I was willing to have my kids do the oath, and or pledge allegiance in either Mandarin and Chinese. And I got one to say yes, and the other one I hadn't talked to yet. That's something somebody wanted to do.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, especially since we have so many foreign speaking don't speak English that were becoming citizens. Was you were supposed to be able to, speak, read, and write English. Under presidents like Obama, it sort of went by the wayside. He even altered the oath.
Yes.
But it's important. I think it'd be important to, a lot of people don't understand that naturalized citizens join the military, people who are elected to public office, or people who are appointed, or even in some circumstances, people who are just employed, literally take an oath. Sheriff's departments, all their deputies take an oath. I do solemnly swear protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Bear true faith and allegiance to the same. So freely and without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Can't remember what her name is. Muslim Linda is her name.
Yep.
And she lied on her application. She is a convicted bomber in either or in Israel. She had been in prison. She lied about that. And her whole purpose is to subvert the U.S. Constitution and to implement Sharia law to replace the U.S. Constitution. We're an allegiance, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, foreign and domestic. Well, she ought to be stripped of her citizenship, because when you take the oath without mental reservation or purpose, in other words, if you were a foreigner here to be, obtain citizenship, and you do it for the purpose of avoiding or outing yourself as a foreign invader spy, that's a serious consequence. If you take oath and your whole purpose is to, you serious that obligation, prosecuted as a spy and be criminally prosecuted for treason.
And she should be criminally prosecuted for treason. But she's Muslim. It's okay to lie to us. We're goyim to them.
Yep. I was going to say the same thing. Yasser Arafat used to say the same thing, because when they said, how could you agree to this stuff? And they're allowed to lie to the non-believers.
Well, that was just a particular, for instance, such as the Fort Hood shooter. He took an oath when he joined the military, and he took it with the whole purpose that he was going to kill Americans, American soldiers, on a U.S. military installation. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew that he was going to do it. And he finally did act out upon it. And there were so many red flags along the way. And he violated his oath. And we need to take that oath seriously. Every citizen, I mean, beyond the Pledge of Allegiance, taking to your own nation is more important than anything else.
Which oath are you talking about, Freedom? How many different oaths are there? Are you talking about oath to your country, military oath, all of the above?
Well, enlisted rank oath, there basically is the same thing with the exception of, and to obey the lawful orders of officers appointed over me. Presidents swear to execute the laws of the state's constitution. They bear true faith and allegiance to and the laws that are created. Presidents are supposed to determine, is the law that Congress passed and sent to him constitutional? If it's not constitutional, he's supposed to veto it and send it back to them, and they need 2/3 then, which generally they don't get. Then the people, when it comes to laws, we have an oath that we are mentioned as the fourth branch of government. No, it's not the media. Citizenry is mentioned through the jury system to is it constitutional? And is it being implemented correctly? Such as, let's say that you have laws towards people who do racketeering, and for people like mafia, those kinds of people, organized crime. But let's say they start using it on the average citizen, really involved in organized crime. But they now are going to accuse them of these kind of racketeering laws. That's a gross implementation of the law against the average citizen, such as the seizure laws. Remember when you could be, the law enforcement could just seize your car or seize money you might have on you, claiming that you got it through drug money, and you'd have to hire a lawyer and spend more than what was seized. And then they took your car, they took your this, and they took your that, claiming that you were a drug dealer when you weren't. Now, that oath that they took, they knew that they were violating that oath, but they were making money for their cities. But they're still violating the oath, the law. Called a constitutional sheriff. Sheriffs are elected. Police departments hire police chiefs. They're not elected. Sheriff's departments are the only, and if law enforcement wants to come into a county, let's say they want to go into Phoenix, Arizona, and conduct some kind of surveillance of something, they actually have to go to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department and get permission to conduct law enforcement acts inside that county. That's a requirement across the entire United States. And there's an oath. And some sheriff's departments keep the oath, and some sheriff's departments don't, such as your right to keep and bear arms. Any sheriff's department is asking you, or any law enforcement agent who's asking you, why do you have a gun? Well, I have a Second Amendment right to have a gun, and I believe you swore an oath to protect that right for me. So they need to be reminded, and oaths are important.
So basically, I guess you're saying that, yeah, the oaths might be important, but a lot of people swore to them lightly because they don't necessarily adhere to them these days.
Yep, I would agree. Well, that was short and sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, what else is going on? Are we live, or is this just a big
Yeah.
get to go?
No, we're live.
We are
But
live.
I'm curious to know if all the oaths through the different, police, government, whatever, are the same. Basically, swearing allegiance to the Constitution. So basically, you're saying that it's really all the same, right?
My understanding for sheriff's departments, I have family members that have worked for sheriff's department and for police departments, and that oath is the same. And it doesn't change, either way. Seriously. And there are people who don't. It's like, well, how can you swear to that law enforcement when you knew about the Second Amendment? So you'll swear an oath to it, but you don't think that the arms, and that shall not be infringed. Congress shall pass no law infringing upon that right.
That's the problem